Welcome and good morning. This is August 9th, continuing in our summer study series. I wanted to explain this a little bit. OCBC, traditionally, bookended by Obon and Labor Day, there are this year 7 weeks. And this is when we go to our summer schedule. So after the Obon special service and the weekend prior to Labor Day, which we have that Sunday off, we have 7 Sundays this year. And each one we go to a summer study schedule or format. It's a little bit more informal. It's a short service with a chant and then adult study. So we don't close down for the summer. We just change formats. So today is August 9th. I am number 4 in the rotation. There will be 3 more after me. And then we take Labor Day weekend off, as we do for major 3-day holidays in America. And then we begin again back to our regular scheduled programming, our normal services during COVID on September 13th. So first, I'd like to begin with Gasho. We'll put our hands together. Naman doubts, naman doubts, naman. So today, I would like to chant the Nembutsu Wasans. We'll do it rather quickly. I don't want to always chant Jusege. It's an important chant, but it's nice to have a variety to our chanting tradition. So in the service book or off our homepage at ocbuddhist.org, there's a link that says Our Service Book. It's on page 76, and it continues and finishes at page 81. So we will take our service book and we will bring it to our forehead out of respect. Namo Amidan Bu. 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 Na mina jo ubutsu no kono kata wa ima ni jikou o hetama eri hoshin no kourin kiwa mo naku se no mo myo o terasu nari. Namo Amidan Bu. Namo Amidan Bu. Namo Amidan Bu. Namo Amidan Bu. Na chie no koumyo hakari nashi uro no shoso koto gotoku kouke kamura anu mono wa nashi shinji Namo Amidan 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 Naげなつのこうりんきわもなしこうそくかむるものはみなうむおはなると述べたも平等覚に奇妙せよナモアミダンブナモアミダンブナモアミダンブナモアミダンブなこうんむげにょこくいさいのうげにさわりなしこうたくかむらぬものぞなきなんじきよ奇妙せよナモアミダンブナモアミダンブナモアミダンブナモアミダンブナモアミダンブナモアミダンブナモアミダンブナモアミダンブナモアミダンブナモアミダンブな少女公明ならみなしぐしこうのゆえなればいさいのごけ
のぞこりぬひきょうえよ奇妙せよナモアミナブナモアミナブナモアミナブナモアミナブナぶこうせゆえゆさいないいちこうえんのぶと名付けたり三途の国安開くなり大おうぐを奇妙せよがにしくどく平等せさいどつぼないしんおじょあんらごくNamandavats, namandavats, 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 namandavats.
Thank you very much for chanting with me. It's really enjoyable to do the Nembutsu Wasans. It's not too long, and the meaning is very deep and emotional, and it has more of a melody, a little bit more dynamic range. So we concluded with our service, and now we'll move to the adult study portion. Thank you. All right, welcome back to the adult study portion of our summer study. But first, I'd like to begin again with Gasho. We'll put our hands together. Namo Amidavats, Namo Amidavats, Namandavats, 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 Namandavats. So today, I'd like to talk about the importance of myth and the dangers of literalism in Buddhism. And sometimes my talks are directed at new people, newcomers, and sometimes I draw a distinction with people that have grown up within the tradition. But actually, a lot of the things I talk about affect both groups, both constituencies, because we've all grown up culturally in America. And we've all been influenced by American values and American definitions of truth, philosophical arguments we've all learned in high school and college. And so I'm going to talk about my personal experiences, but I think they're no different than those of a Yonsei, a fourth generation person who's grown up in America. It's something that modern people have to deal with. And one of the things that I found difficult when I came to a Jodo Shinshu temple is Amida Buddha and Namo Amidabutsu. Over my shoulder, I have a small Obutsudon. There's a statue of Amida Buddha in there. He is not really a he. He's not historical. You could say he's a personification of ultimate reality. But I always looked at it literally. I kept thinking it was a person or a being. And Namo Amidabutsu, Where does that come from? I always wanted to know, what does it mean? Why am I saying it? I needed it translated. And I didn't really think of it as something emotional or something that affects your heart. I was always looking for meaning. And so I wanted to talk about these two things today and the power of myth, the power of stories. In Buddhism, stories are not important because they're historically true, but because they're spiritually true. They carry a deep emotional truth that resonates with the human heart. And I first came upon this in a modern context, listening to Tony Kornheiser on the Tony Kornheiser podcast. He's on Pardon the Interruption on ESPN with Michael Wilbon. And he has a film critic on about once a week, and her name is Anne Hornaday. She's a movie critic for the Washington Post, and she also is an author of a new book entitled Talking Pictures, How to Watch Movies. I just purchased the book on Amazon this morning. It was about $12 paperback. And what she does is she tries to educate modern American viewers on how to appreciate film, that it's not a documentary. It's not historical. It doesn't matter if it's true in terms of time and space and history. It matters if it's emotionally true. Does it affect one's heart? And so she explains here that when we watch films, we're so worried about whether it really happened or not that we miss the message. So one example is Hamilton is streaming right now on Disney+. I have some friends who don't like Hamilton, the musical, at all. They've never seen it, but they object to it because they say it's not historically accurate. But it's a work of art. It's not a documentary. And even films that are based on a true story, sometimes you'll see inspired by a true story. These stories are a leaping off point for being able to create myth and fable and folklore in a way that's more dramatic, in a way that punches harder to one's heart. So I'd like you to listen to what Anne Hornaday has to say about being a little bit more sophisticated and how we appreciate these stories that we have in our popular culture.
Is that films, the job of a film is emotional. You know, it's not intellectual. It's not reportage, quote unquote. It's to get us emotionally and to convey, and that's the term of art they always use, is they're conveying a quote unquote emotional truth. Now, that can be a fig leaf for all sorts of sins of omission and commission and cherry picking and all the rest. But I just think audiences also need to be a little more sophisticated, you know, about what they're seeing. Like you said, these are movies. They're going for an emotional experience rather than a fact.
Though, didn't Spotlight hew to
Yes.
the book without making things up, without elaborating?
Yes, yes, and that is true. And it's like, and P.S., they actually didn't. Interestingly, they did not adapt a book. They did not adapt the book that the reporters wrote. Rather, they went back and did their own reporting on what the reporters did, which they never wrote about. So, and it's true. The people that were there for the events, you know, the reporters and editors who took part, really do give it high marks. I mean, of course, they created golf games that didn't exist. They created face-to-face meetings that were actually done.
They
on the
elided
phone.
some not that they didn't happen, but the meeting where they're facing down the Boston, the high
lawyer.
school lawyer, that didn't happen.
That did not
sorry,
happen.
Ann, you're exactly right. Sorry.
And a lot of the dialogue that is spoken was actually done in emails. But to their credit, I mean, to me, I don't care. You know, if they're making it more interesting visually, but they're staying true to the substance of these conversations and these interactions. So I do think, you know, and now we're in this sort of fact-checking age, right, where it's almost becoming a part of the aesthetic experience is okay, how did it hew to events and how did it depart from them, and then does that matter, and what are we going to do with that? I mean, it's kind of all part of the viewing experience now.
But what you're talking about with emotional truth, I mean, that's, for me, that's why I walked out of Brooklyn thinking this is the best movie I've seen all year. I mean, you're moved by it.
Exactly. And you know what else? That is based on a true story, apparently. It is based on a real couple.
Well, everything other than Star Wars is based on a true something or other.
True?
What? What? No, that's not true. It might be true.
I felt that same way about Fast and Furious 7.
So I really liked a couple of the lines in there. One was they talk about the movie Spotlight, and a lot of the dialogue occurred, but not on a golf course, not face-to-face in a dramatic way, but through emails. And I always thought, do you know how boring it would be to watch a movie of people silently reading emails at their desk? And so they reframe, they recontextualize for dramatic effect, for the message is more important. And people are missing that because they're doing consistency checks and fact checking. And I wanted to share one of those with you. This was one of my favorite TV shows, Alias, with Jennifer Gardner as Sydney. She's like the female James Bond. She's the Nikita. I thought this is one of the best shows I've ever watched on television. I've watched it once live, and then I also watched it again on Hulu or Netflix from start to finish. And it's amazing. But I went on to IMDb, the interactive media database, and I started reading some of the reviews of Alias. And I was surprised to find that a lot of people couldn't engage in the story and suspend their disbelief because they're fact-checking. So it says here, during season 4, the shots of downtown Los Angeles are clearly from years past. BP Plaza was renamed Bank of America Plaza in the summer of 2004, and the Disney Concert Hall is never seen. Character error. Characters often mispronounce the first name of Milo Rambaldi as Milo. If he was a medieval Italian, he would probably be pronounced Milo. Did not ruin the show for me. And this is my favorite. Errors in geography. In many of the episodes, when Sydney visits other countries, one can identify that filming took place in the United States because of American telephones, traffic lights, types of signage, types of cars, architecture, door frames, and even doorknobs in the background. Those are subtle for the most part, but people living in the countries depicted feel that something isn't quite right. So this is fact-checking and historicity, taking it to the extreme. And it really ruins your appreciation. I didn't do this. I want to be entertained. I want to be moved. So this also affects the way we appreciate Buddhism and Namo Amida Butsu and Amida Buddha. There's a wonderful article in Tricycle Magazine. It is from 2012, and it's written by Rita M. Gross. So if I click on this, here's the article. She wrote this article. She's a Buddhist feminist scholar, and she talks about the dangers of literalism within Buddhist traditions, and especially America. So I wanted to give you a couple quotes from this article. The Heart Sutra is a very famous Mahayana text, but she says it cannot be considered historical if by history we mean, as we usually do, a factual narrative about things that happened empirically, events that a camcorder could have recorded had it existed at the time, something that could be included in a documentary. The Heart Sutra is not that, but something else, which I shall simply call a story. Story is thus a more encompassing category than history. Both are types of narrative, but historical narratives are constituted from the facts as best we know them. Stories are not constrained by the demands of factual accuracy. Novels, films, plays, these can be entirely fictional, yet we all know they can nevertheless communicate values and meaning. And then she goes on to say that few Western students of Buddhism, in my estimation, realize how thoroughly they have imbibed the values and outlook of the European Enlightenment, especially its definition of truth as something that is empirically verifiable. This is a materialist understanding of truth, not a Buddhist one. Nevertheless, because such students have decided that Buddhism is true. They conclude that anything narrated in traditional Buddhist stories must be true in the only way they understand, as something that happened in space and time, just as the texts describe it. The idea that the story instead takes place in the realm of imagination and symbol challenges their notion of truth. It means to them that the story is false and without validity. And this was some of my problem with the larger sutra. It didn't seem historically true to me. It seemed like fantasy. And so I didn't appreciate it within its own context, not as history, but as a deep story. And so this is an important thing to realize when we study Mahayana texts. It's like listening to a song. It touches our heart, and that's where the truth lies. And another thing that really, really helped me is when I found The Power of Myth. This was an interview series, 6 on DVD, by Bill Moyers and Joseph Campbell. Bill Moyers is a famous news reporter, and Joseph Campbell is a very famous folklorist or mythologist. He studies all the great world spiritual traditions, and he finds themes, and he really emphasizes the importance of myth. And language is poetry to explicate the deepest truths, to transcend our normal ways of thinking. So here is The Power of Myth by Bill Moyers. And if you click on this link, you can get to the website. So all these 6 videos are on the Bill Moyers website. This is a picture of the homepage. So there are 6 episodes, and I'm going to look at episode number 6. But it's really nice. Everyone has the video. You see the little white triangle in the red box. So the video's there. But what's even nicer is you can also see the transcripts. So each interview, each of the 6 interviews between Bill Moyers, I think around 1988, and Joseph Campbell, the videos are available free online, and you can also read the transcripts and highlight it and print it out on your computer. So I'd like to share with you 2 videos, not very long. Joseph Campbell is quite profound. He's also talking about religion in terms of something deeply spiritual and transcendent, in which one touches eternity, a timeless truth within one's life. So Reverend Harada, Bishop Harada, often talks about 2 levels of Buddhism. There's kind of a secular truth, meditating, breathing, calming down, kind of limiting one's ignorance and desires, functioning better in the world, which is very valuable. It's necessary. But there's another level to Buddhism, transcendence, moving beyond good and bad, embracing the world as it is. This is kind of the spiritual home run that Buddhism has, and Joseph Campbell is speaking about when one really finds depth in their Buddhist practice. So I think everyday secular values and improving our life is necessary, but it's not sufficient. It's very hard to think your way out of the truth of life and death, or good and evil. It's important to move beyond those ideas and embrace everything in life. So one thing he begins to talk about is the importance of language and its limitations. So I think sometimes because of Zen, there's an idea that language is insufficient at describing transcendent truth. And this is likely true, but there's another type of language. There is enlightened language. There is sutra language. There is Namo Amida Butsu language. This is poetry that goes beyond language of fact and description and information. So this is on the edge of meaning. This is wordplay. When you listen to the Beatles, or I listen to the Beatles, George Harrison especially, is playing with language. It's on the edge of meaning. It's the only way to capture a truth that goes beyond everyday life. And this is what Namo Amida Butsu does. It's enlightenment in sound. For example, it's hard to know the entire Pacific Ocean, but when a wave crashes, you can hear the roar of the infinite. It's this sound that's breaking through timeless reality into our reality and making it known to us. So what I'd like you to do is listen to this clip from episode number 6, Masks of Eternity, and the importance of words and language like Namo Amida Butsu.
That whatever eternity is here right now.
Or nowhere else, or everywhere else. If you don't experience it now, you're never going to get it. Because when you get to heaven, that's not eternal, that's just everlasting. Heaven lasts a long time. It's not eternal, it's everlasting.
Well, I don't follow that now.
The eternal is beyond time. The concept of time shuts out eternity.
Time is our invention.
Our experience, yeah. But the ultimate, unqualified mystery is beyond human experience. It becomes inflected. As they say, there is a condescension on the part of the infinite to the mind of man, and that is what looks like God.
So whatever it is we experience, we have to express in language that is just not up to the occasion.
That's it.
It's
That's
inadequate.
what poetry's for. Poetry is a language that has to be penetrated. It doesn't shut you off. It opens. It's the rhythm, the precise choice of words that will have implications and suggestions that go past the word is what has to happen. And then you get what Joyce calls the radiance, the epiphany. The epiphany is the showing through of the essence, what Aquinas called the quidditas, the whatness. The whatness is the Brahman.
Why do you think it is there is in so many people this deep yearning to live forever, to secure my place in heaven?
When you realize what heaven is, in the works of such a person as Thomas Aquinas, it is the beholding of the beatific image of God, which is a timeless moment. You know, time explodes.
So he uses a lot of examples from a lot of different religious traditions, but he's saying that there is an infinite, transcendent spiritual reality that makes itself known to us through language, through poetry, and through words. And Namo Amida Butsu functions in that way. When I came to OCBC, I wanted Reverend Harada to please translate Namo Amida Butsu for me. I wanted to know what I was saying and what did it mean. And he told me to just keep saying it. And that made me very suspicious. He wouldn't translate it for me. But that's because I think at a very deep level, it has no real literal meaning. It is the experience of oneness. It's the experience of the transcendent truth within my everyday life when I enunciate or pronounce those words. You can think of it as a concentrator of meaning, that Namo Amida Butsu represents the tradition, the teachings, the words, the language of the infinite within our everyday lives. And so if you say it enough, you begin to intuit the meaning. You begin to feel what it means. You begin to have a sense of oneness where the wave and the ocean become one when the wave crashes and makes that noise. It's infinite reality manifesting within our everyday life. And as he says, if it's not here and if it's not around us, then where would it be? And so this really, really was a breakthrough for me one morning on PBS. This really helped me appreciate the Pure Land tradition and the larger sutra and Amida Buddha. It is a symbol. It is a something we focus on. It represents ultimate truth manifesting form in our everyday lives. And so in this next clip by Joseph Campbell, also episode 6 from The Masks of Eternity, he begins to describe the infinite causes and conditions that is not part of our lives, but is our lives. You don't have to become one with things. You are one, and you realize it through the story of the larger sutra and chanting Namo Amida Butsu and chanting the Nembutsu Wasans. You chant it for effect. They're not flashcards. We're not memorizing. So here's part 2 of Joseph Campbell.
It's an idea that occurs in India in the image of what's called the net of Indra, or the net of gems. It's a net of gems where every gem reflects all the other ones. And they also have the idea of a spontaneous and simultaneous arising. Everything arises in relation to everything else, and so you can't blame anybody for anything. It's all working around. It's a marvelous idea. It's as though there were an intention behind it, and yet it all is by chance. None of us has lived the life that he intended.
And yet, we all have lived a life that had a purpose. Do you believe that?
I don't believe life has a real purpose. I mean, when you really see what life is, it's a lot of protoplasm with an urge to reproduce and continue in being.
Not true. That's not true.
Well, now, wait a minute. Just sheer life can't be said to have a purpose, because look at all the different purposes it has all over the lot. But each incarnation, you might say, has a potentiality, and the function of life is to live that potentiality. Well, how do you do it? Well, again, when my students would ask, should I do this, should I do that? Dad says I should do this, and my answer is, follow your bliss. There's something inside you that knows you're in the center, that knows you're on the beam, that knows you're off the beam. And if you get off the beam to earn money, you've lost your life.
So it is not the destination that counts, it's the journey.
Yes. There's a wonderful old man, I think he's still alive in Germany, Karlfried Graf Dürkheim. And he says, when you're on a journey and the end keeps getting further and further away, then you realize that the real end is the journey. It's not bad. This is it. This moment now is the heavenly moment. And
I like the idea that Eden was not, Eden will be.
Eden is.
So I get goosebumps when Joseph Campbell says Eden is. It's timeless. And it's very interesting. Bill Moyers is trying to keep up with Joseph Campbell, but like a Zen master, Joseph Campbell always tries to take him a little further and push his understanding a little further. So when Joseph Campbell says that he doesn't think life has a purpose, what he's saying is it has a process, the life of Nembutsu, to be connected with all things, to be on the path, to listen to the Dharma throughout your life, is awakening and insight. It's a thing we do. It's not something we achieve. And so Joseph Campbell is incredibly deep. He's a year or so away from his own mortality. He dies shortly after recording these 6 videos. And so he's speaking about Buddhism and Eastern religions in a very deep, profound, spiritual way. This is the depth that one finds spiritually when one listens to the teachings, chants Namo Amida Butsu, and listens in a way that's not historical and not literal, and maybe not worrying so much about everyday life, but finding a deep transcendent truth in which one touches a timeless truth within their everyday life. And when this happens, you can embrace reality just as it is. Everything's reflecting this transcendent, timeless truth all around us. And so there may be things we don't like. There may be things that we change, but we're all part of this. And everything's moving and arising together. And so another aspect of this is to find your authentic self. To move forward with confidence, not worrying about outcomes and not worrying about purpose, but finding a process, a path, an activity that resonates with you and the universe. And we do this in Buddhism through Namo Amida Butsu. So I hope these two make more sense now. They are symbols. They are poetic. They're not literal truth. Don't pick them apart too much. Don't be too scientific. Don't be too philosophical. Be more pragmatic. The teachings and the path has a huge effect on us. And so everything in Buddhism is pragmatic. If it works, it's true. And so I know for myself that listening to the teachings slowly changes my perspective. I look at the world differently. I rely more on intuitive sense now than I rely on reason and analysis and analytical thought. I don't figure things out as much as I used to. I feel them. I connect. There's a sense of intimacy now that I feel with my life. I'm not just an observer. I'm a participant. And so I hope this will help you embrace Buddhism in its own context. Buddhists never read their texts in a literal way, in a historical way. It's always been a story that affects us and changes the way we see the world and realigns and reorients ourselves in the world. So please join me in saying this poetic expression of ultimate reality, Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. Thanks for sharing this Sunday with me. And please join us again next Sunday for the 5th summer study course. Thank you.